afternoon. Welcome back to the Warriors Refuge with your host, Dr. Cliff Robertson. And I'm so glad to be here today. It's been a full day of sharing with you what we're doing. You've gotten a couple of sneak peeks into who we are at the refuge and what we're doing. It's hard to get a full grasp of it. In the last segment, we talked about and introduced you to some of the staff. And there's some new folks. There's one person in particular that may be that may end up joining us in this session. We'll see. But in the meantime, what I want you to know is that we thank each of you for all you do. Even if it's just sharing the message today, even if it's just sharing it on with somebody else, even if it's just acknowledging that there's a need and good work's being done. What I wanted to do to wrap up this final segment, for Giving Tuesday, is to kind of help you get an idea of how someone goes from wanting to be a part of the military, following a dream, whatever it may be, to being homeless. And some people think that process doesn't even begin to make sense, but I want to just kind of share with you a slideshow, if you would, just to kind of give you kind of a feel for it a little bit. As members of the military, we all stand in this room. We're in our civilian clothes, and we're raising our right hands and repeating after the person, saying, "I do solemnly swear to protect and defend the United States of America." And we say an awful lot that day, and it's really it's really an emotional day. It's one full of hope and promise. It's we're seeing ourselves as oftentimes as heroes, as people that we're going to go and be a part of something so much bigger than ourselves, and it's exciting, scary, it's humbling. And then we move to we ship out and we go to our first day of basic training. And I will tell you that first day of boot camp has to be one of the most humbling experiences ever. I remember my own, where we got into I went to Great Lakes, Illinois, and we walk in. We don't get there till after midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and they just say, "Here, sleep here." And about 2 or 3 hours later, I think it was about 4 o'clock in the morning, garbage cans are being thrown down the center aisle, and the lids are being banged together, and there's lots of screaming and yelling, and we are all out of our bunks. We don't know what to do, and we have people up in our face yelling at us, and we don't really necessarily know what they're saying. They're using a language that we learn later as military language, and some of we're just not going to repeat today either. But it's a humbling experience, and it really just kind of begins to break you down, and instead of the person that you were, you become this disciplined person. You learn the language, you learn a system of, you learn a code of conduct, you learn all these things. So when you get to graduation day and you're marching in your uniforms and you're proud and you're just on top of the world, and you feel invincible at that moment. You are a lot of times your family is there watching the formation pass and pass and review, and you've gone from being completely broken down to being completely built back up into a warrior. You really are. In that moment, regardless of what your job may be, you have gotten to the point of being a warrior. And then the next step in the process is training that leads to you to the point of getting ready for a deployment. Sometimes that training may be technical. You'll see in the slide here some satellite dishes and all these different things. You may be an electronics tech. You may be you may be an infantry. You may drive a tank. You may be on an aircraft carrier. I was an air traffic controller in the Navy on an aircraft carrier, and it was this whole different world. But getting ready for deployment was a lot of work, and it was a lot of intense pushing. And what you learn from that is that the more you do something, the more the repetitive, it just kind of drills it into you, so that when something happens, you don't even have to think about it anymore. You're just on go. You just have this automated response, and you're ready, or at least you feel ready for whatever the enemy is about to throw at you. You feel like you are. Not always, but you feel like you are. Then the deployment happens. You actually getting ready to get real. Maybe for you it was it was the Middle East. For some it's been in different places. My first deployment was through the Med to the Persian Gulf. And while I was on an aircraft carrier, the slides you see in front of you are a group of women who are in the Middle East, and they're getting ready for well, it says this is about to get real. And that's the thing to think about, is that while all the preparation in the world is awesome, and it prepares you for what you're about for what you're about you for what you're about to see, the struggle kind of begins there. Because you see, all that training leads to something that is really hard for anybody to prepare for. Because when it comes down to it, and when you're face the enemy, I love this next slide that says, "Hold your position. The enemy is inbound to your position." In other words, all the training that you have done, everything you've prepared for, from learning to fire your weapon, learning to act in a certain way, prepare in a certain way, it's all coming down to this moment. And it can be brutal, and it can be ugly, and it can be more than you could ever imagine. And then sometimes something goes wrong. Maybe the person next to you dies. Maybe you feel like you should have taken some action, and you didn't. Maybe you hesitated, or maybe an enemy surprises you, and somebody loses their life. I shared in a previous segment that a guy named Alan was in the midst of driving a command vehicle, and vehicles exploded around him, and bits and pieces of another vehicle that exploded are raining down on his. What he didn't say there is that bits and pieces of other people were too. And you have to ask yourself the question, why am I still here? Why was it them that passed away and not me? Why am I still here? Could I have done something more? Maybe if I had been more vigilant, maybe if I had done something else, maybe if I had been better, maybe if I hadn't been out the night before, maybe the replay in your mind of what all happened and didn't happen or should have happened brings on can bring on post-traumatic stress disorder. Post-traumatic stress disorder is the aftermath of a truly traumatic event that your mind is continues to replay, and it can become debilitating. A lot of times, as we talked about earlier, in this next picture, you have a guy that looks like he's got it all together in one, in one picture, but inside he's saying, "I don't want to live." He's saying, "I don't want to live anymore." Because see, he can no longer deal with the struggle inside of him. That record that keeps playing over and over and over again, that DVD of what happened, and all that, just it's it's harsh. It can be difficult. It can seem impossible to get past, and you just want to stop it. And this picture you see, is all too real. Um, 22 a day. But see, there's a lot more people out there that are not while they're not killing themselves with a gun to their head, they're killing themselves in other ways. Um, See, the emotional and physical pain of war left untreated leads to out of control PTSD, which also can lead to drugs because somebody wants to numb the pain, shut down that voice inside their head, and in order to do that, um, they take out they drink alcohol, or they take a drug to quiet it down. And sometimes in order to maintain that, they they go to crime, because when you're on drugs and you're dealing with PTSD, a lot of times you can't maintain a job. So how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to keep living? So they turn to crime. And then what do you do? Well, eventually you're going to get caught. Eventually you're going to do time, and you're going to lose everything. And that's why a lot of people end up homeless. And it's heartbreaking to watch. This is one way, and there are others. But according to, well, I just need you to know that this isn't an isolated case. You see, we have a real problem. According to the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness, Texas has 2,200 homeless veterans, and we're third highest in the nation. 2,200. 2,200 people or more that fought for this country are homeless today. Something has to be done. But let's put that into perspective, if you would. Okay. Let's just you say 2,200 people, you say, well, in the grand scheme of things, maybe that's not a lot of people, but the truth is, it really is. This is what this picture of this stadium filled with people on the ground floor is an example of what the numbers of Texas homeless veterans look like. Staggering. Staggering to think about that there's that many men and women who fought for this country that are now unable to maintain a household for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's PTSD. Sometimes it could be other types of losses, depression, anxiety. It could be loss of a loved one that sends somebody over the edge. There's a lot of different reasons, but at the end of the day, it's something that needs to be handled. It is also estimated that over half of those men and women are within 100 miles of the greater Houston area. So where you're standing today, most of the people listening are in the greater Gulf Coast, Brazoria County, Harris County, Fort Bend County, Galveston County, other surrounding county area. Within a 100-mile radius, over half of those, so 1,100, and we don't have the beds for that. In fact, there is no shelter in this area that is built to serve this community alone. There are shelters that take in veterans. Okay, don't get me wrong. There are shelters that take in veterans, but there isn't one that takes in only veterans. When I recently looked at the VA's numbers for this area, what I found was that there's approximately 100 beds available combined between all the different smaller resources around. A total of 100. When you have 1,100 or more that are needing a place today. I mean, that is a lot of people on the street today that we need to be serving. So when we put that in perspective, it's overwhelming. But here's what's worse, and this is where this Giving Tuesday campaign is really coming into play. Is it all comes back to the COVID-19 pandemic, where we've got this huge devastating problem that is devastating emotionally, it's devastating financially, and when you put the two together and you combine all the other issues, relating around veterans and homelessness, and the fact that there's, that prior to this there were 1.5 million veterans on the verge of homelessness in America. The problem is only getting worse, but when you add the pandemic on top of it, the VA is anticipating these numbers to grow even larger. As scary as those numbers are, the numbers can get bigger. And that's where we come into play. That's what we're saying. So what do we do? It all comes down to this. They served us. Our veterans served us. Now it is our turn to serve them. And see, this is our mission at the Warriors Refuge. Our veterans served us. I was part of that. In fact, I shared earlier that there was a time in my life when I spent 120 days in a veterans homeless shelter because I had lost everything. And it was a launching pad for me. It was a way for me to start over. And I was so grateful that it's there. But I will tell you that there are a lot of people struggling today, a lot of veterans struggling today that don't have that option, that don't have that to rely upon, that do not have the opportunity to have this place where they can push that restart button on life. And at the Warriors Refuge, that's what we're building toward. We when we're able to open this next wing that we're currently working on, that we showed video footage of earlier today, that'll be adding 24 new beds. We still have 2 more wings to go. 2 more wings that will add a total of 42 more. By the time we're done, we'll be able to house in excess of 100 veterans. And that's our goal. That's our mission. But the truth is, we need your help. The truth is, we cannot do it without you. Giving Tuesday is about a call to action. Let me kind of explain where we are. When the pandemic set in, and our shelter has been able to remain clear, and we were able to do that because we brought on some additional staff members for security that check people in, that make sure that nobody that's not supposed to be there, and the only people that are supposed to be there are staff, residents, and medical professionals. If you're not part of that group, you don't get in. But we had to bring on additional staff to monitor that around the clock. We've had to ramp up our push for more beds, and frankly, we need your help. We need your help to be able to continue this fight. So I want to call on you today to see what you can do to help us. Maybe it's $5, maybe it's $25, maybe it's more. We talked earlier that there have been some really generous people and foundations that have really come to bat for us. And you may say, well, they've already taken care of it. There's no longer a need. The problem is the need is ongoing. The more people we get in, the more it costs us to run the facility, the more people we have to help. According to the Veterans Administration, it costs approximately $1,400 a month to house, do case management, counseling, transportation, feed, and all the different things we have to do to help take care of a veteran, to help him or her get back on their feet. So when you do the math and you see that at a point we'll be we'll be at close to 100 or over 100 people, that's a big number each month, and that's a scary number. And What I want to tell you is without your help, we're not going to be able to do it. Now, does that mean that we're not going, that we're going to stop functioning? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. We're going to be smart and we're going to take care of the people that we can take care of. Well, what we'll have to do is we'll have to get to a point prior to our capacity and say, we can't take anybody else because we don't have the means to take care of them. And that's going to break my heart. It's going to break my heart to have to say no, not because we don't have the space, but because we don't have the capacity to care for them and do what needs to be done. Because see, just providing a bed is not the answer. Just providing the space is the answer. If we're just doing that, all we're doing is prolonging the process of them getting back on their feet. What we have to do is we have to be involved in active case management, where we take them from, where are you today? What are your skills? What's your experiences? What training do you have? Where are you from a mental health assessment perspective? We put them through a mental health assessment. Are you battling any chemical dependencies? What does all this look like? And create a plan for them and then help them begin to walk that plan out. Whether they're able to go back to work or they're not, whatever it is, putting together that plan and helping them walk that out, knowing that this takes time, knowing that this takes money and resources. That's what we're here for, is to help them get back in the game, get back in the fight, get back in the battle. And that battle is called life, and it can be a struggle. And some people want to say to a homeless person, well, just get over it. Just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and figure it out. Well, the problem with that is if they don't have these resources, a lot of times they won't be able to do it. Most of the time they can't, because if you don't have a place to get clean, how are you going to go on a job interview? If you're not mentally okay, how are you going to be able to hold a job? If you have chemical dependency issues, how are you going to be able to stay clean, sober, and out of trouble? If you have, we could go on and on. If there's all manner of issues, there's all manner of challenges that a homeless person goes through. I had an opportunity to volunteer in two different organizations. One that did basically a weekend where you live as a homeless person lives on the street, and you don't have but just $4 or $5, and you've got to figure it out. And it's really eye-opening. How do you do that? How do you survive? How do you make it? Where do you live? And it can be far harder than those of us who've never been in that situation than you can imagine. The next one I went to was a poverty seminar or session or simulation, and the struggles that people went through who were dealing with this and dealing with that, and it was really eye-opening for a lot of people. Having been there, it was exactly what I expected. But for those that have never been there, it was truly eye-opening. So what I want you to hear is, this isn't just about providing a place for somebody to stay. Because if that was it, if that was all we had to do, this would be really simple, but it would be unnecessary, because it really wouldn't be helping. It really wouldn't be making a difference. It would be allowing them to pause and regroup until they move on to something else. If we're really going to make a difference, if we're really going to end veterans homelessness, at least in our area, in the greater Gulf Coast area, if that's what we're going to do, it's going to mean we're going to need your help. We're going to need you to join the fight. So I'm asking you today, will you help us? Will you help us? Will you join the fight? Because I will tell you that without you, we cannot. We can't win the fight on our own. We are not big enough. There's not enough of us. We can't do it. So will you help us? Maybe you're saying today, I don't have the money to be able to do it. And I will tell you, I completely understand that. But maybe there's something you can do as a volunteer. Maybe you have some items you can donate. Maybe there's something like that. There's something that we can all do. And I want to challenge you to look deep. If you're a person of faith, I want you to pray about it. Pray and ask God, what would you have me do? And then do what he tells you. Do what you feel like he's leading you to do. At the end of the day, I just want you to know that every dollar that comes in is going to help veterans. Every dollar is going to help veterans. So it's important. It's really important that we do this, because imagine, if you would, for just a moment, you were one of those veterans and you went overseas. You went to places and names of cities and countries that you can't even point them out on a map, and you put your life in harm's way. You sacrificed your time, your life, to serve this country. And when you got back, this country didn't understand what the problems were, didn't understand, and didn't care that you were struggling with scars that were invisible. Not a lot of fun to imagine, but it happens every day. Let's see what we can do to stop that. It's been a pleasure visiting with you today this way. I hope in the not too distant future that you'll come out and visit us, call the facility, and schedule a tour if you'd like to come by and see it. Love to have you come out. Love to have you come be a part, whatever that looks like for you. I really appreciate your time today. If you've hung out with us and watched any part of this video, I hope it's touched you and moved you. I'm not going to take any more of your time, but again, just look deep today if you can. Just look deep. See what it is that you can do, because I'll tell you that you can make a difference. I was telling a guy earlier today that's part of our staff, and he is painting a room. And I was telling him that you got to realize that what you're doing is going to make a difference for a very long time, for a lot of lives, a lot of men and women who come through there. It's going to make a difference. And what you're doing is important. And how you respond to this today is important. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I'm Dr. Cliff Robertson, the Executive Director at the Warriors Refuge. Hope you have a great day.